He saw them drowning in the river. I mean, what else was he going to do? They're calling for help, their arms reaching out from the water. So the first thing he did, didn't think twice, jumped off that bridge to save them. But in the water, they disappeared. Their arms reaching for help, no longer. There was no one in the water. And he was like, what just happened? I've got to tell this story about the Clark Street Bridge in Chicago, Illinois. If you're watching from around the world, Chicago has a lot of haunted locations, but not enough, I don't know, mention is talked about with the Clark Street Bridge. So I had to look into it. I was in Chicago a couple years ago, walking around that lakefront area right off Wacker Drive, and I kept looking into the water. In fact, we were standing right on the bridge looking over the water, and I just thought, wow, what if someone fell in there? What if someone drowned? The water it's very dark, murky, green, kind of has a greenish tint to it. Well, we're going to get into it. What happened on the Clark Street Bridge? So if you're new to my channel, I'm Dr. Andrea O'Connor. Welcome here where we talk about really interesting things. And today it's the haunting of the Clark Street Bridge. So my husband was at work. He was talking to a former police officer that worked in Chicago, and they were talking about my channel. And he said, well, has your wife ever heard about the haunting at the Clark Street Bridge? Of course, I hadn't, even though I was recently in Chicago, and I'm actually from Chicago, never heard about this. So apparently in 1915, so this is a long time ago, a huge steamer ship capsized. And I guess it was going to be a big company picnic for the company called Western Electric. And so this was a big deal. Like the employees wanted to go. It was rumored that even up to 2,000 passengers could have been on this vessel. And unfortunately, for some reason, it was still docked at the area there. It hadn't set sail yet. And for some reason, it capsized. Well, this was tragic because 844 people died that day and 22 families obliterated because it was a company picnic. They brought their children and their babies, husbands and wives. 22 whole families lost their life, and then a total of 844 people. And it was so tragic. Like there's images on the internet of them just hauling out bodies, and there's caskets on the side of the dock. I mean, and if you've ever walked down that Clark Street area now in Chicago, there's restaurants and shopping, and it really is a beautiful area. I had no idea. Well, guess who did know? Oprah Winfrey. I didn't know this either. So apparently Oprah's show was shot out of the Armory building, which I guess they say is no longer there. But apparently she talked a lot about the hauntings there. There was the gray lady who was in 1915, 1920 style gray dress that Oprah said she saw, and other employees that worked there saw as well. And other employees heard like children running up and down the hall. Now, why is the Armory building important? Well, apparently they had stored a lot of the people that had died, and they had put their bodies, they had to store a lot of that over at the Armory building. So apparently that building was very haunted. Did you know that they talked about that on the Oprah show? I did not know that. Well, so it turns out the buildings, those warehouses and whatnot, which are now restaurants and shops, that are right near where that ship capsized. Customers eating at the restaurants, people that work in the buildings, say they see shadow people in the windows walking by, even like trying to signal for help. And this is the wild thing. People sitting at the restaurants at the side there, they have said that they've looked down into the water and they see people drowning. They see faces in the water. They see faces and arms coming up out of the water, like as if asking for help. One person, even sitting at the restaurant, said they saw someone beckoning and waving for help as if they were drowning. They called the police. The police get down there. Nobody's there. They search the area. No one's there. And many times that happened. Many people had actually called 911 for help. People are drowning. They go, they look, they get the boats out. There's nobody there. Now, I didn't look into all the other drownings and people that have probably been hurt there. But the police officer that was talking to my husband said, not only was this huge tragedy, now that is a huge imprint on that area, all that trauma and people to this day seeing people faces drowning. But he also said it's a very well-known site for people trying to end their lives. And one spirit in particular, people say when they're walking on the bridge, especially at night, calls out screaming, I guess saying it's his wife's fault, I don't know, jumps off the bridge, ends their life. Some people relive seeing someone jumping off the bridge and they look down and they see people asking for help. Some people have even jumped to try to help them and nobody's in the water. Nobody is there. That's why I think this story is incredible. And he said that it's really well known for people jumping off, ending their life, and then other people walking around the bridge, seeing people down below waving and calling for help. But what he barely mentioned that, yes, a ship had capsized, he wasn't sure. But I think that is what is imprinting on the area. It was this ship called the Eastland. And if you're in the Chicago area, it's around, so it's Wacker and Eastland. I guess that's the area where the ship capsized. And that, I guess they even said that one of the famous coaches of the Chicago Bears was supposed to like board that vessel, but couldn't get there in time. And so his life was saved, because you wonder, like, what was keeping him from boarding that vessel? Like, why was he late to the game there? But yeah, he ended up not being on that one. And I think it's curious too, because of those terrible wrecks. Like, think of the Titanic, right? That happened, wasn't that 1917, 1918 or so? I mean, that terrible. But that happened in the middle of the ocean, right? Where there were icebergs. There's really no streets and buildings. But this horrific accident that I think has affected, well, at least that's what the witnesses say, the restaurants and the buildings and the shops, people going to work and eating, saying they're seeing people drowning in the river. Now, when I was walking around that waterway, we went up, down, went around, went on all the bridges. I never saw faces in the water, but going across a couple of the bridges, I felt very uneasy walking up and down the stairs, because I was like, oh my, thinking in the back of my head, like, what if these stairs collapsed, or what if the bridge collapsed? Like, the last thing I would want to do is drown in that water. Like, I almost felt kind of the dread of the area, but I didn't see any of the faces or the people drowning in the water. But people to this day, eating, walking around the area, swear that they hear screaming, they hear voices, they hear even children, families calling for help. They jump over to try to help, and no one is in the water. No one's in the water. And the other thing too, like, imagine working in that office building near the area where people are saying, they work late at night. They see someone walk by, they look, there's no one there. It's a shadow figure going down the hallway, and they see people in the window. I'm telling you what, I was not aware of how haunted this area was. So if you live in that Chicago area, please comment below. I think they say it's not on the haunted tours, but I kind of think it should be. And it's a tragedy. And just imagine. Yeah. So leave your thoughts below. Thanks for being here.